Hello, hello, and welcome back to Supposedly Fun. I am Greg, here today to do another chatty video, and if you've watched any of these before, you know I don't mean chatty in the sense of me talking to you about book updates or things like that. Chatty in the sense of starting a discussion that you guys can participate in, and we can try to figure out how the world works. I've really enjoyed doing this. There's kind of been a progression of some of these. It started where I did a video talking about if it's okay to review a book that you DNF. In that discussion, a lot of people were saying that they don't think you should be allowed to put a star rating on a book that you DNF because it will skew the star ratings for the book, and that would be unfair. So that led to me just last week doing a video about whether or not we trust star ratings in the first place, because to be honest, I always take them with a grain of salt, especially if a book is new. Editing Greg is realizing that he forgot a key point, which was that in Doris's video she pointed out the idea that ratings might get skewed on a newer book or a really popular book, but over time they'll sort themselves out. The right opinion will prevail. Because if somebody's skewing the results, over time there might be enough legitimate reactions to the book that things will balance out the way they should be in the first place. I actually agree with that. There were a couple of other comments that said some similar things. But what do we think of that as a group? I feel like part and parcel in that, and one thing that a lot of people reacted with is how they decide on star ratings. So I feel like that is the next logical progression in this video. There have been some really interesting comments about the ways in which people react to star ratings, how they think star ratings should be done. A lot of people don't rate things. Doris from Aldi Books had a really interesting reaction video in which she talked about how she does not do star ratings. I will link that video down below. And she raised a lot of points that are actually going to inform the questions that I ask toward the end of this, later in this video. Jacqueline from 6 Minutes for Me did a really interesting response in which she talked about her experience with it. I will link that one down below. Britta Bowler also joined the conversation, and I will link her video down below. And it's just been really interesting to hear how people think about these star ratings. One thing I did want to say from Jacqueline's video, she had responded to something I said in the last video where I mentioned that because there are people who get review copies of books or are given things for free, I have seen instances where I was one of the founding members of the Amazon Vine program back in the day before I really stopped using Amazon completely. Well, not completely. I still use them occasionally, but I try to source other ways if I can. But I was one of the founding members of that. In the community, a lot of people expressed fear that if they wrote negative reviews of things that they received for free as part of that program, that they would be kicked out and not get stuff for free. So they would just rate anything that they got for free positive because they didn't want to rock the boat. So Jacqueline pointed out that she gets a lot of stuff for free, and she knows a lot of other people who do and take their role very seriously. She was not offended, but I did want to clarify. I do think that there are a lot of people who take that role seriously. And someone else, I can't remember who, had commented to say that they like to read the reviews because through the reviews you can get to know the people who are being honest about their opinion of a book, even if they got it for free. Generally speaking, if somebody is just doing like a fluff piece, talking up a book because they got it for free, you can kind of tell because either they're lacking in specifics, or it just, you can tell generally. And I think you can find people like Jacqueline through their reviews who are talking about the book very seriously and who you can trust. And I just wanted to make it clear that everybody knows, I'm not saying everybody who gets stuff for free is not being honest. What I was trying to say inelegantly was that I always rely on the reviews more than the star rating because it's through the reviews that you can find the people who you can trust. And that was that. Doris's video was also interesting because she talked about how ultimately we all have different opinions, and that's okay, and that's very true. For me, I just think it's so interesting to find out the different ways we approach things. And I'm someone who always questions the way I do things and whether or not there's a better way of doing things. And I'm like the discussion about whether or not it's okay to rate a book that you DNF really informed me because I have traditionally rated a book if it met certain DNF criteria, like if I got far enough into it. So that whole discussion helped me rethink how I approach that. So I don't know, I just find maybe it's like a budding sociologist in me. I just really like hearing how other people approach their reading and how they think about these things. So I like these discussion videos, and I really am grateful to everybody who participates in them and adds to the discussion because, to the point, everybody thinks differently, and that's okay. And because it's okay, I think it's just interesting to find out how everybody else does it. Because it's like Reese's, there's no wrong way to eat a Reese's. Well, there's no wrong way to read a book. So, and react to a book. And I think it's also interesting to get into how people react to things. If some people think very critically about the book, some people react emotionally. All of that is okay and valid. And I just like that. So getting into this, so I mentioned we're going to talk about how you define your star rating. So I guess the natural thing would be for me to start explaining how I do it. And I used to have a very dedicated system for this. I started out reviewing books on Amazon in my spare time because what I had noticed was I would read a book, go on to the next book, and not really think about what I had just read, and I was doing no processing of it. So I started writing reviews on Amazon because this was around the year 1999 or 2000. Amazon was still new at the time, and not as certainly not the behemoth that it was or is today. So it was really the only game in town to write my own reviews since I am not a critic. So I would do that. And the way I thought about it was in 1999, I was still in high school. Maybe that's why this came about, but I thought of the stars as letter grades. And my earliest reviews all had a letter grade at the end. So it would get 5 stars if it was in the A range, 4 stars if it was in the B range, 3 stars if it was in the C range, 2 stars if it was in the D range, and 1 star if it was just an F. And that's how I thought about it. And because there are no half stars, even if something was like an A minus, it would get 5 stars. Even if something was a B plus, it would get 4 stars. And that's how I approached it. Over time, I've moved away from that because it's kind of having like a B plus or an A minus adds a little bit of shade and color, but it's kind of hard to think about books in those terms, or it has been at least as far as I have gotten away from high school. So now I don't have a very set guideline anymore. I'm picky about giving 5 stars. I don't think that any book is perfect, which is something that Britta mentioned in her video, but I'm not really exclusive. If I think a book is really great, and I react very strongly to it, I will give it 5 stars. And for me, the middle ground, like a 3-star rating, is something that I liked parts of, but I didn't like parts of. I neither recommend it nor don't recommend it. It's just kind of there in the middle, and that is kind of my baseline. It goes from there. If there's more about it that I didn't like, it gets 2 stars. If there are things I really hated about it and would absolutely not recommend, then it gets a 1 star. That's how I think about them. And let's kind of test how picky I am real time, because I haven't actually looked at this, to see of the books that I've read this year on Goodreads, how many I've given 5, how many 5 stars reviews I've given, and of those, how many I actually added to my favorites shelf on Goodreads. So let's check this out. So on my 2019 bookshelf, I have 82 books. Let's see, how many got 5 stars? Okay. 16 books got a 5-star rating for me, and there is one that I would actually probably think about downgrading to a 4. Of those books, let's see how many I actually added to my favorites shelf. Okay, I counted it up, and there were 6 books that I added to my favorites out of that 15. I am thinking I might take I'm going to take one of them off that, though, so we're left with 5. By the way, this is going to build into one of my questions, which is whether or not your ratings are fluid. Mine are definitely not, as you can see that I just removed one from my favorite shelf. So the ones that that were 5 stars and favorites are A Fine Balance, Cranford, A Place for Us, Educated, and The Gift of the Body. I believe those are the 5. So you can see right there, even within the 5-star rating, I have a little bit of a discrepancy. Not everything that I give 5 stars is actually something that I would consider a favorite. Editing Greg again, because I realized I forgot to do the opposite of this, where I looked at how many books I've given a 1-star rating to, and there are 3 books that I have given a 1-star rating to in the year of 2019. One of them I may bump up to 2 stars, which would leave me with 2. They are The Chestnut Man by Soren Sveistrup, Fertile Lance by Nero Wolfe, and If You Want to Make God Laugh by Bianca Marais. Bianca Marais, I think I'm going to up to 2 stars. I really got angry reading that book. I had a very personal reaction to it, but I think there is room for other people to read that and have a very different experience of it or reaction to it. So, all right, I'm going to do it. I'm going to give Bianca Marais 2 stars, but that leaves me with Fertile Lance, which I really think that is a book that did not age well over time and don't think I would recommend to anyone, and The Chestnut Man. I can see that somebody would read The Chestnut Man and enjoy it. I just think it falls into all of these lazy traps that so many mystery books do, and it's accidentally offensive in a lot of ways. So I'm going to leave The Chestnut Man with 1 star. And there you go. One of the first questions that I want to ask is whether or not you change your star ratings over time. I absolutely do. And there's a prime example right here, A Ladder to the Sky. So I finished this book last week on Thursday night or Friday morning, I don't remember which, and immediately rated it on Goodreads. I gave it 1 star. And then I sat with it over the weekend and I thought about it. I did my kind of rant review of it yesterday, and after I did that, I was thinking, you know, I don't like this book, but I don't think it's a 1 star book. I do think there are things about this that other people would like, and for that reason, I went back to Goodreads and I gave it 2 stars instead. Similarly, I gave Elton John, which I have returned to the library now, I gave that book 4 stars when I finished it, because I was thinking, you know, for the most part, I did like it. I was actually surprised that the video I did yesterday, which I will link down below, turned into a rant. I didn't think that my feelings about it, the negative feelings about it, were that strong until I did the video, which is interesting because even when I finished Ladder to the Sky, or part 1 of Ladder to the Sky, I told Sean, Sean the Book Maniac, who I did the buddy read with, that I did not have strong feelings either way about it. I was just kind of meh about it. And then I started talking about the book to him, and by the end I was kind of ranting about it and all of the different things that I didn't like about the plotting and the characters and things like that, and just kind of discovered I actually do have strong feelings about this. And I think that's one of the reasons it's important for me to do reviews, because if I had just finished this book or just finished Elton John and not talked about it at all, I might not have discovered those feelings that I had about it. So I definitely love doing reviews for that sake. But I went back to Goodreads and knocked Elton John's autobiography from a 4 star to a 3 star, because for me, 3 star means there are things about it I like, but there are things about it I don't like, so I'm literally in the middle. That's what the 3 star rating means for me. And I put that one there. And I rescued this from a 1 star review and gave it 2. I don't really recommend it, but I know there are things about it that other people could like, and I think that's a little bit more fair. So there you go. And probably the most famous example of me changing my mind over time is actually The Virgin Suicides, because when I first read The Virgin Suicides, I really wasn't sure I liked it. I thought the structure made the Lisbon sisters really inaccessible. So if you haven't read The Virgin Suicides, it is told by a chorus of boys who are remembering the Lisbon sisters, who they grew up around and who, of course, all committed suicides, because that's the name of the book. And I felt like you never actually get to know the sisters. They're always at a distance from you, so I didn't like that. So I rated the book 3 stars, and I actually left my review up on Amazon, because Amazon is where I rated things at the time. Nowadays, actually, Britta mentioned that she doesn't review anything on Amazon, and I am the same way. I don't do that anymore. I just do not. As little as I support Amazon as little as I possibly can, because I want the money and the goodwill to go to other places. And don't start with the Goodreads thing, because I am very aware that Goodreads is owned by Amazon. So even by using Goodreads, I am technically supporting Amazon. To me, if there was a different book site that I could rate and review things and discover books on, and create like a want to read list that would compete with Goodreads, I would happily use it. I have not found one that I like as much. If you have recommendations, you can feel free to drop them down below, but I have not found one that has given me the function that Goodreads has, as broken as the function of Goodreads can be. But it is kind of the best thing out there if you want to use a service like that. That's the end of that tangent. But anyway, point just being, Virgin Suicides ended up being a book that really stuck with me, and as I thought about it and thought about my review over the next year after I read it, I realized that's actually the point. The point was that the Lisbon sisters were inaccessible to the boys, and they were kind of creating this sense of like mythos around them. And I really respect that, and I respect what Jeffrey Eugenides was doing. And I think one of the things that makes that book hold up is that Jeffrey Eugenides isn't trying to explain what it's like to be a teenage girl in America necessarily, because which could potentially be problematic, since he is a male writing from that. He is literally doing it and observing from a remove, and the whole part of the struggle is that he doesn't understand. And that makes it really poignant to me. And I love that book. Nowadays, I give that book 5 stars. So absolutely, I change my mind over time. And I think that's okay. But I'd be interested in knowing if other people do the same thing. Now, getting into the discussion section proper, I would love to know how you decide on your star rating. And the first part of that seems to be, what is your baseline rating for a book, if you have one at all? I know Doris said she assumes that any book that she is going to read is going to be a 4-star read because she's looked into it and whether or not she wants to read it, so she's probably more inclined to like it because she's done that legwork to see if it's something that she would enjoy. I go in without much of a preconception, but for me, every book would kind of start in the 3-star area because that is my baseline. I've been disappointed enough, even having done the legwork, that I know I could still fall into a lot of different clunkers. So my baseline is 3. That's it. And I would love to know what yours is. Another thing, God, there were too many people who have talked about this. I think it was Doris who mentioned that she knows people who feel like they have to have an average star rating on their Goodreads page. So Goodreads will tell you what your average star rating is. Actually, let's find out what mine is right now since I have it open in front of me. And I genuinely don't know. So this will actually be interesting. But yeah, it tells you what your average star rating is. Mine is a 3.52. That's interesting. It's kind of, I said my baseline was a 3. That is around a 3, trending up. I do try to give things the benefit of the doubt and especially give them some leeway if I feel like other people will enjoy them. So that's interesting. So Doris was saying that some people feel like they have to have a specific average rating on Goodreads, so if they get too far away from it in either direction, they will go through and re-rate things. I don't do that. To me, that sounds insane, and it's something I didn't even know what my average star rating was. So to me, it's not something I worry about. If it's something you worry about, I just called it insane. I'm sorry, but I would love to hear why you feel like you need to have an average star rating and what it means to you. The next question would be, are you picky or selective about giving 5-star ratings out? Or do you think it's a good tool to support a new author? If you feel enthusiastic about a book, do you just give it 5 stars? What does a book have to do for you to get 5 stars? For me, I just have to, there are books that I know are flawed that I have given 5 stars. There are books that I know are flawed that I have liked and called my favorite book of the year. For instance, The Great Believers by Rebecca Mackay was my favorite book of last year. I know that book has flaws. I know there are parts of it that are better than others. But to me, the overall impact is a 5-star read for me. It ultimately was my favorite book of the year. So for me, there's a lot of leeway and a lot of different gradations in each star rating. And if you are trying to do a little bit of legwork to find out if you are going to read a book, is there a minimum threshold star rating for a book that you will read? For instance, if it does not have at least like a 3.5 rating, will you still read it? For me, I might still read it. I have read books that have under a 3-star rating because I thought there was something about it that might appeal to me, or that some things that may not have been fair in the reviews that I was seeing of it. So for me, still open season. I don't really have any kind of a threshold for that. And again, if you have a defined rating system, and this has been one of the things that is really interesting, I would love to hear what that system is. I'm going to put another link down below to a channel called onyxpages. This is a new channel for me. I discovered her channel because she commented on my last video about the star ratings, and I watched the intro video when you go to her page. And it's really interesting. She has a very specific set of criteria that she thinks about a book, and her rating is informed by how well it or how badly it meets all of those different criteria. It's very interesting. I recommend checking it out. I'm really enjoying exploring her channel as well, so please check that out. It's onyxpages. I will put it down below. And if you have a set of criteria that you think about like she does, I would love to hear what they are. If you have just a general system for how you do it, if you just want to give hugs to every book and give it 5 stars, I would love to hear that as well. So I think that covers everything from my end, at least everything that I can think of. So I would love to hear what you have to say about this. If you want to do a video about it, please go ahead. I've really enjoyed watching Jacqueline's and Britta's and Doris's. So if you want to do your own, go for it. And if you want to just drop something in the comments, do that as well. And if you think I'm crazy for my rating system or, anything like that, I've really enjoyed hearing how people think about the books that they read. So I really enjoy hearing what everybody has to say about these topics. You know, some of them are kind of specific, but they help get to a lot of different corners of reading and how we as readers live and how we think about what we read. And I really enjoy that. So thank you for sharing your thoughts and for taking the time to watch this video. As always, I appreciate that. And as always, I'll be back. Until next time, happy reading.